students, Cynthia Nitch here, wanting to go over your first case, which is procurement. SAP calls it Materials Management, MM. So what we're going to do is we're going to procure to pay. So we're going to, we can either ask or request like raw materials or semi-finished materials or even trading goods. And then once we get them from our vendor, then we pay our vendor, right? So it's procure to pay. There's some, warehouse management that happens here and so forth. In the global bike, we need to make sure our organizational structure is correct. We talk about the master data that happens in procurement and then the process of procurement. So I like this video, and usually I would just say, check the video on your own time, but then I'm afraid you're not going to. So I'm going to show it. It's just a really nice map of how supply chain works. So we're going to watch it.
It blows my mind that only 13% of Americans know about this. If you're a homeowner and you're at least 50 years old.
When people ask me, what does SAP do? Well, I use a metro system analogy. So for this, just put yourself in the shoes of a bicycle manufacturer that wants to expand to another continent. Now, this manufacturer has received investment, money, and they will need a set of tools to manage that money. How much do they have? Budgets, liquidity, treasury, all those terms, and also at the end of the year, do an annual report to see if they are making profit. With this money, typically the first thing they do is to hire people. And now here is another set of tools, another metro line that you need to manage hiring, competency, you have approvals, who's the boss of who can do what in the system, and also when you retire them and what happens. You have also a commerce website, maybe where you can sell the bicycle online. You have a marketing team that will have to do this work. And you will also have a sales line, a group of people that will do some phone calls and travels to go see clients and eventually maybe get a sales order. The sales order is the yoo-hoo moment. That means that you've sold something. I've just opened the expense and travel line on the side because those people will need to track where they're going and to know that they're not just overspending and things like that. Now, this yoo-hoo moment triggers the supply chain. You need to deliver those bicycles. But you also need the tools to design them and plan them and purchase the parts and get inventory and warehouses. Also have delivery and maybe even maintenance at the end. And this is a very large line of supply chain to manage that core business of yours, which is making bicycles. Underneath, you will need a procurement line to provide everything that is needed from the photocopy machine and its paper, but to the rubber tires or even the security around computers as a service. Now, this is a world here that is underneath, making sure that when you're going to sell something, it didn't cost more than what you're selling at. And finally, linked to procurement, you will have suppliers that will want to be paid. They will send invoices. And there you go. You have the world's business metro provided by SAP to do all the different kinds of work needed to be successful. And a last note here, if you are using a specific process, let's imagine on your bicycle that you have a special kind of artificial intelligence analysis.
Okay, so that was that. I love that video. I think it just kind of sums everything up. But not to do double back-to-back videos, but this video is specifically for procurement. So we plan on making bikes. We buy our raw materials or semi-finished or trading, and then we pay for our materials. So end-to-end process with SAP. And this one's called Ariba. By the way, Ariba used to be its own company, and then SAP acquired it probably like 6-7 years ago. So let's watch this video.
This is Amazon's new money-making app. Let me show you how it works. That app is called Audible. It's created by Amazon, and it is
trying to do full screen, but it's not letting me. Full screen.
Whoa, I guess I've just been procured. So let's talk about procurement. Procurement is at the center of every business. It takes care of obtaining what the business needs for its operations. I'm going to show you how Ariba goes one step further by merging all the functions of procurement into one single tool that even includes finance and the suppliers. So let's start this journey with a concrete example. Peter, our security officer, will be needing first aid kits. Now this is only one example of many MRO, goods, services that are covered by procurement. Let's go quickly over the process. We'll come back with a demo. So Peter goes into the internal catalog and makes a requisition with first aid kits. This then needs to be approved by his boss, and then it becomes a purchase order. For the sake of simplicity, when you see blue, it's related to the buying process. When it's going to be orange, it's the pay or the supplier interaction. And later, when we're going to look at green, it will be the planning phase. So, the supplier receives the purchase orders, confirms it, and sends a delivery notification, for example. At that point, Peter receives the good into the system so that when the supplier sends an invoice, it can be matched with the purchase order and with the receipt for good compliance, and it's ready to be paid. Now, this was part 2 of the procurement process. It was the operational part. Now, where do you think this first aid kit came from in the first place? Well, it came from a contract. And this contract was negotiated with many suppliers that were pre-qualified, registered, and some of them were even discovered in emerging markets, for example. And all of this is based on the procurement planning that you did in the beginning of the year, based on your spend analytics. So you see now in green how the planning phase gets then executed during the buying process all the way up to the supplier that sends an invoice. So what gets paid is what was negotiated, and what gets planned gets executed. And this is how Ariba merges the planning, buying, and execution or paying phase of the process all under one tool, under one login, both for the supplier and for the buyers. So let's look at what it looks like.
All right, so I'm going to go back, but I love that explanation, and we do some of that in the case. We don't do all of it, but most of it you'll see when we actually do the case on like qualifying, requesting a quote, and so forth. Okay, so procure to pay, this is basically it. There are more steps in the middle with your case that you're just kind of checking your work after every big, I guess, task. So, so we ask for a purchase rec, and that means that, actually I don't really want to go into it because I have a slide on it, but purchase rec means that we're asking to buy more raw material because we just had a big order for Global Bike or something like that. And then we make sure we select the right vendor, and then once we get the right vendor, we go ahead and do a purchase order, and we send that to our vendor, and then our vendor sends us what we purchased in the purchase order, and then we get it delivered to us. And once we get it delivered, we do this goods receipt, pardon me, and we make sure that what we ordered was actually received. So we have, these are the goods that we're receiving, and then we go ahead and do an invoice receipt that everything that we ordered was ordered correctly, and then we go ahead and pay the vendor. So basically this is what we're going to be doing in that case. So just FYI, goods receipt is a document that confirms that a company has received the items ordered. So when you do goods receipt, it's just moving goods, right? Receipt of the moving goods that we got to procure, to make, and produce a bike. So there's also one that's called good issue, but we're just going to do goods receipt for this procurement case. All right, so purchase rec. So what we do is it's an internal document requesting that the purchase department to procure a specific good or service for a specified time. So it's internal, and we're saying, hey, you know what? We need to go ahead and buy more raw material or buy more wheels or tires for the bike order that we need. And so they kind of look at it and say, okay, how much do we have in stock and how much do we need, right? So the purchase rec is just to say, can we buy extra stuff so that we can build our bike or build anything really. So purchase recs can be directly, which will be manually, like let's say you're a salesperson, just got a big order for your global bike and you're not expecting it, then you can just do a direct manual order, or you could do it automatically if levels of your inventory is running low for production or like just a regular ongoing sales order from maybe a partner that you use all the time. Okay, so after you know that you're going to get your rec approved, we have to go and get our vendor. And this process is if we don't know our vendor, right? Sometimes we work with a vendor for 30 years and we're just basically supply partners and we don't have to vet them because we already vetted them. We already know the price that they're going to give us and so forth. Or if it's a new material and we need to go look and search for a vendor, then we have to qualify them. So if nothing exists in the system, we'll need to submit a request for quotations to our vendor. And an RFQ request for quotation is an invitation to a vendor by a purchase organization, I'll talk about this in a little bit, to submit a bid. So we'd say, hey, this is our purchase rec. We need, 400 wheels. And then give us a quote how much you would charge us for those 400 wheels. And you would send it to multiple vendors if you needed to qualify them. And then these vendors will send the quotes for that 400 wheels. And then you evaluate that, like how long is it going to take for them to get that done? What's the shipping cost? What's the actual cost of the wheels and so forth? And then when you decide which vendor you want, you're ready to do a PO. Or if you don't find any vendor that you like, you just reject that letter. Okay, so first you got to do a rec, and that rec is approved. Then we have to find a vendor if we don't have an existing one already. So qualification, like I said, from vendors, pricing, conditions for materials, and so forth. So the vendor evaluation, like I said, was price, quality, and delivery. So when you choose a vendor, those are the major aspects that you want to look at. And then we're ready to, let's say we already chose our vendor. I forget what the vendor is. I think it's like Fun in the Sun or something like that for the case. But once so we already know our vendor and we already got approved to order the stuff from the vendor. So we create a purchase order so that we can send it to them and get the material we need. So the purchase order can be used for a variety of procurement purposes, procure materials and services. Right now we're just procuring material. Special procurement types would be subcontracting, like we subcontracted the composite frames and wheels. And then the purchase order, external sources, and we can have internal to procure. So let's say I have a Dallas headquarters, right? And I'm trying to procure, and I know the one in Germany has extra, and it's kind of like you don't want to store a lot, you want to have a thin inventory. So I can go and ask Germany for some parts or whatever, and that would be an internal procure. You know who has an internal procure is like Johnson & Johnson, where they're like worldwide. So big companies buy from each other from the same company so that they can keep the audits straight. So anyway, this is what a purchase order, I just got this offline, but it's created manually. You reference the purchase requisition. So look, so when you fill out a purchase rec, it has like all of the order things you need already. So when you're creating a purchase rec, you can ask, if you've already created a purchase rec, you can ask this information to be copied into your purchase order. Okay, so there's times where you don't even need to do a purchase rec because it's an ongoing order. So sometimes this step doesn't even include in your purchase order for, for special reasons or particular reasons. But so you're not double, like if you're gonna reference a purchase rec, you just copy it into the purchase order and then you make the changes you need. Or you can do a purchase order reference through a quote. So either one, the purchase rec or the quote, you can create a purchase order from that. And you'll see that in your case. It says like you'll do an inquiry, then you'll do a purchase, and then a purchase rec, and then a quotation. And basically, if you already know your vendor, you would skip all this and just create the purchase order. Otherwise, you would have to either copy from this or copy from the quote. So purchase order has a header. This purchase order is for US company, and the purchase group is North America, and our company code is US00. So with Global Bike is US00, and then that purchase organization is also from United States. Then we have an item overview, and in this one, we're going to buy, this number is just a item number. It's not saying we're buying 10. It's just they'll do item number 10, item number 20, item number 25, or whatever. So our material is on the case, it's chain lock. And then the short text is chain lock. How much? 200. Delivery date, net price, sold each, it's a utility, and so forth. And then here on the item details, it just kind of shows us like how much money it's going to cost. If we did a discount, where would that discount look like, and stuff like that. So purchase order output, there's a variety of forms that aid the purchasing process, like order acknowledgement forms, reminders, and schedule agreements. You'll work with a schedule agreement on your case, but not necessarily these two. So once the order of our 400 tires, are in with our company, like we actually received them and they're in our warehouse, then we're ready to go ahead and send them a goods receipt saying we got them. So here's this good receipts. FYI, when we do good receipts on our case and you complete your goods receipt, and if you accidentally do something wrong with the purchase order, there's no going back. So you make sure that everything's nice and neat before you do goods receipt, because unfortunately, if there's something wrong with your case, you'll have to do all those previous steps again. So anyway, here's your purchase order. Then we call up the vendor and say, hey, we're going to work with you. And then so the vendor says, okay, we'll make the product and we'll send it to you. And they ship it, and then we get the goods, right? So we do a goods receipt, letting our internal company know that the product is in. All right, so here you go. Goods receipt, goods movement in which we accept the goods into our system, right, from the warehouse. If materials are delivered against a purchase order, we then reference that order. So you just get your purchase order and you make sure all these things are happening and that the purchase was correct, right? Like determine if we got what we ordered, the purchase order history is updated, that we did receive the order, and so on. So the effects of goods receipt, I won't go through all of them, but material document is created, the accounting is created, stock qualities are updated, stock values are updated, and so forth. So everybody knows what's happening in the warehouse to the actual distribution center and the production center. Okay, so invoice processing. So this is our invoice. So Global Bike creates an invoice for receiving it, right? Internal. It has nothing to do with our vendor. So incoming invoices are referenced against the purchase order to verify the content, price, and arithmetic. Once verified, an invoice receipt is created. If discrepancies arise between the purchase order, good receipt, or invoice, the system will generate a warning or an error. So once we get the goods and then we do an internal invoice, then we're good, right? We accepted it, everything looks great, and we can move on. So it's called a three-way match. This is on your exam 3. It's just like, what do? Your purchase order, then you get your goods receipt, which is the actual quantity that you hopefully ordered here, and then your invoice receipt is the actual price. So here's our target price, and then here's our actual price, and hopefully they're the same. All right, and then we're almost done, right? Financial accounting, this is kind of internal auditing. Once the invoice receipt has been posted, the verification process is completed, and we're ready to go ahead and pay our vendor. So that's it. That's kind of like the process, okay? So now let's just go to global case 1 procurement, and I'll review this stuff for you. So we'll just make sure our organizational structure is right, that we're on the US, and then what's our master data for the procured products that we're using or we're requesting, and then just go into the procurement process like we just did. So you guys seen this before, so I won't go in it too much, but Global Bikes 255, our company code is US. These are our plants. I think we're going to receive it in San Diego, and we're actually doing a trading good because we're doing a chain lock. Does that even show you? Not yet. Okay, so here's our company code, US 00. And then I think we're going to be doing San Diego plant, and we're going to do trading goods. That's our storage location or pallet, right? So in context of procurement, a plant is a location where the materials are received. It is referred to as a receiving plant. That's pretty easy to know, right? And we have a manufacturing plant as well, but we're just receiving goods. So our storage locations are places within a plant where materials are kept. I already talked about that. A plant can have multiple storage locations, each of which is designated for different purposes, like staging area. If I needed to build the wheel or put the tire on the wheel, that would be a staging area. And then you would have an inspection area, maybe to make sure that the bike is complete and there's no missing or bad parts. And then you would do storage of material. So a plant can be basically anything, really, that has to do with like storing stuff or setting it up to be built. Okay, purchase organization. So I get into this part just because it's on your test, and there's different ways companies can do a purchase organization, and then there's a purchase group. So it can get a little confusing. I won't go in it too much because you'll see it on your case, but it's really easy and simple. But it will be in your exam 3. So purchase organization in the United States, it evaluates and identifies vendors, and it negotiates the contracts and agreements. Okay, so it's a big old overview of United States and probably Canada and Mexico, South America, and they're like, okay, who are our vendors on this side of the world? How are we going to negotiate our contracts and so forth? So it's just kind of like a big overview of who our vendors are and where we spend our money. There are 3 types of purchase organizations. There's an enterprise level. That would probably include, Germany and United States. You have a company level, would just do United States or just Germany. And then you have a plant level as well. These models range from highly centralized to highly decentralized, and Global Bike does a little bit of both. So I'm just going to show you the pictures, and I'll let you guys come back to this when we get into our exam, because you probably forget about it. And it's used in the case, but very quickly, like probably just once. So this is the enterprise level, right? US and Germany has the same vendor contracts, all right? Like the same group of people are negotiating United States stuff and Germany stuff. Then you have a cross-plant model. I'll show you that. So US only does the purchasing for US, probably, and South America and Canada. And then you have Germany. So they're separate based on the two companies. And then GBI has a hybrid. So let's look at that. Oh, I didn't have a picture of it. Let me go back. It says GBI has adopted a hybrid model to include a single global reference organization called GL00, a multiple company code specific purchasing organization in the United States. The purchasing organization is US00. So US does their own purchasing, but we also work together with a global. So purchasing group is your day-to-day, and that's how you're going to identify them on a test. Like purchasing group would be like in-house. You can walk over to the office and ask what's up, right? So it's not the global one that's overlooking everything, or it's not even like, the big picture of South America, Canada. It's just it's day-to-day purchasing within kind of your group, including planning, create purchase recs, requesting quotes, and so forth. Okay, so in our case, we're going to create our master data. A lot of the procurement, let's say, we already have our vendors, and those vendors, we've already set up our master data. But in the case, we actually create a whole new master data for a whole new vendor. But master data is the data that is the mission control to running a business. It describes the people. You had this on your test. But customers, employees, suppliers, everything. So it's all the data that you want to dump in to a product, to a vendor, to a customer. All that information, all that data helps us know where things are, what's our ORI, just everything kind of keeps that company healthy. So master data is typically just a small percentage of business data, but it's the most complex and valuable. The more data you have on particular things like your vendors or your customers, the better. So here's what a master data would be like if we're ready. We already know who our customer is. This one says Midwest Supply, what material that we're buying from them, and then how much it would cost and so forth. So vendor, this is our vendor material master data, what we need 200 bikes, or 200 tires, or 200 chain locks here. And then purchasing info, like anything, like let's see, what's the material, what's the quantities, what's the delivery schedule, the invoice, the delivery address, confirmations, conditions. So it's crazy, all these things will get inputted in, and then you will see the outcome of any of these. So this conditions, you see the outcome of conditions here, right? Because that's being focused on. All right, vendor master data contains all necessary information needed to do business with the vendor. So you need to know their name, what's our number for the vendor, where's their address overview, identification, control, payment, transaction, status, legal, data, vendor, and some other things. So you'll be filling out a new vendor in this case. So on your client level, what's the address, what's the vendor number, preferred communication, and so forth. And then purchase org is purchasing currency, like the euro, salesman's name, and vendor partners. Here's a material master video. I'll let you guys watch that on your own. Hopefully I don't regret that. But I really like it. It's kind of a slower video, but it just shows everything that you would need to know for a material master. And it's kind of nice to watch this one, because then when you're doing your case, you can kind of think back of how they showed them doing their material master, and you'll just get a better grasp of what the material master is and what it's used for. So watch that, please. Okay, so material master, we saw how to get it here. We're going to create a basic data one. This is the material number, deluxe training bike, and then obviously it's deluxe touring bike, and it's in black. They sell it by each. The material group is bikes, gross weight, and so forth. And then you fill in basic data 2, and then you fill in sales org 1, and so forth, to populate your material master data. Okay, so sales and distribution, So if you use most components with the SAP, let me just read it. Contains all information a company needs to manage a material. Sales and distribution, materials management, production, plant maintenance, accounting, and quality management. So if you get your material master wrong, it would really mess up your data, right? It'll really mess up your bottom line. Purchase information record comes from your material master and your vendor master, and it gives you this purchasing information record. Contains the relationship, helps organizations select the best vendor, pricing, supplier performance, and so forth. So allows you, because you're the buyer, right, of the stuff that you need. You're going to buy it from a vendor, to quickly determine which vendors have offered or supplied specific materials like tolerance limits, specific lead times, and so forth. You'll see this on your case: availability periods, vendor evaluation data, stuff like that. So here's just a picture. So you have like your purchase order. It has the material master stuff in it, has your vendor master stuff in it, and also the purchase information record stuff in it. All right, so here's the case. So you're going to do Global Bike needs 200 chain locks to sell. And really we're procuring this, and we're just going to slap our name on it and say it's ours, right? So it's a trading good. It's not a raw material. It's not a semi-finished good. It's an actual trading good that we're going to buy, and we're going to buy 200 of them. So we have to create a new material master for this trading good called a chain lock. And after checking the stock, it's empty. And we start the procurement process by creating a purchase rec. And then after we just kind of evaluated the vendor that we wanted, and it's Fun in the Sun Seats and Bar, is the company that we're buying those chain locks with, right? Or so we're buying these chain locks so that we can put them on our bike and then sell it with Global Bike. So Fun in the Sun is just a vendor. And they are going to go ahead and create the chain lock for us and then ship it to us. And so we need to create a purchase order. The purchase order needs to be split into 2 orders. First order is 3 months from now, and the second order would be 1 week from the first order. When you guys do this split, for some reason, some of you guys might be kind of like, cross-eyed by doing the case, and you're tired at this point, and you'll always, like, some of you guys will forget to do the split. But guess what? You'd have to redo it if you don't do the split right. So really pay attention to what's happening in number 4 to keep your life happy. Okay, so, and then once you receive your goods, you're going to post the goods receipt like we talked about, and we're going to create 2 partial invoice receipts, right, from the 3-month delivery and the 1-week delivery. And we post those payments to the vendor. So, so you're going to do this twice before you post payment. And here's just a little graph. I used to make or have my students do a process module, but we're not going to do it this year. But you'll notice that in this procurement process, we have accounting, materials management, and master data. And so if we're looking for a new vendor, we start the search for a new vendor, and if we found a new vendor, we move on. If not, we go and start that search again. We create that material master that has basic data, delivery, MRPs, and sales. That's manufacturing planning. And so then we go and ask for our purchase rec, and it's approved. We create a purchase order. We get our goods back from the vendor, or goods from the vendor. We create the invoice that everything we ordered here was given to us, and then we do an invoice in-house, and then we post payment to the vendor, and then we do a general ledger. So that is what procurement process here on SAP will look like. I'll do another video to show you some other things and to start SAP so you can see what that looks like. Thanks for tuning in.